Police divers made the grim discovery at around 10 a.m. after information from a 32-year-old Stockton man led them to the site.
This morning we've had the police diving unit come up from Sydney to conduct a search along the harbour foreshore here, adjacent to Fullerton Strait. During that search we've located a motor vehicle with the body of a deceased male inside.
Last seen in nearby Fullerton Street at midnight Friday, the 19-year-old was reported missing by his family yesterday. As the tight-knit community looked on, accident investigation officers scoured over what's been described as extensive vehicle tracks in the park. Waratah detectives will prepare a brief for the coroner.
There are a number of avenues of inquiry that we're following up. We haven't excluded any explanation into this as yet, but as I said, the matter will be prepared and placed before the coroner for his determination.
The car will also undergo mechanical examinations later this week. Fine weather made for a perfect Mother's Day around the Hunter, with hundreds of families holding a picnic lunch. At John Hunter Hospital, Nick and Margaret Talebski were celebrating the arrival of one of the first Mother's Day babies in the region.
I'm excited.
Very excited, yeah.
Great Mother's Day present.
Ethan came into the world just after midnight, weighing in at around 3.5 kilograms, or around 7 pounds on the old scale. And while it was a delight, no one's more glad that it's all over than new dad Nick.
It was very difficult for me too, just looking after my wife, and basically she was going through a rough labour, and I was there to support her.
While new mothers enjoyed their special day, nurses were also lapping up some attention as they prepare for a week of celebration to mark International Nurses Day. A chance to reflect on a job that has its fair share of sacrifices.
Well, being a nurse, you always make the sacrifices on days like this. You always like to be home with your kids.
The week also aims to raise awareness of a side of the job that often goes unnoticed.
Dealing with emotions, when people arrive here, they're under big pressure. Their relatives are critically ill, so dealing with that's the hardest.
Stephen Mount, NBN News.
When it comes to location, it's hard to find anything that will surpass the stunning blue water wonderland that is Port Stephens. All of the peninsula north of Taylor's Beach is for sale by tender, featuring 7 kilometres of water frontage.
I don't think anything of that size has come up in Port Stephens since the Australian Pastoral Company back in the 1800s.
The property has been owned by the Tilligary Pastoral Company since the 1960s. While there was considerable interest to develop it during the early 80s, tougher government regulations now mean it won't be as easy for potential buyers today. Bids upwards of $3 million are expected. Agent Stephen Dick says what the land will eventually be used for will be just as unpredictable as its price.
There's always somebody who comes out of left field and comes up with a use for the property that you never ever thought of.
One option, which won't require rezoning, is to develop the land for aquaculture. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
Travelling down the coast seemed no problem for Maitland, who grabbed the 2-0 lead and continued to put the home side's keeper Scott Horn under all sorts of pressure. The visitors looked sharp, some good lead-up work ending with Theo Grushka finishing for a 3-goal buffer. Daniel Willer sparked a comeback for Gosford, but the visitors went on to register a 5-4 win. In Black Diamond AFL, both Cardiff and Wyong remain undefeated, while Premiers West Newcastle Wallsend are still without a win for the year after 6 rounds. Lochinvar equestrian rider Sammy McLeod has virtually assured herself a start at the coming World Championships after winning the international 3-day event in Sydney. In doing so, McLeod beat Olympic gold medalist Stuart Tinney, who placed second. To a different type of ride, but the same result, and Merryweather's Mitchell Ross has won his first ever World Qualifying Series event in Japan. The top place finish is sure to rocket him up the rankings before the next WQS event in the Maldives. Windale Gateshead has secured 4th spot in the State Premier League Lawn Bowls competition after beating the Hills in a catch-up game at the weekend. The win means Windale will now host a preliminary semi-final this weekend against Birrong. Warilla and Mount Lewis enjoy a weekend off after finishing in the top 2. And Japanese Olympic silver medalist Mai Nakamura joined a large group of her country men and women at Lambton Pool yesterday for the 8th Grandmaster Swimming Championships. It was the first time the event had ever been contested in Australia. Rain or not, driving go-karts is something too hard to pass up, and after this morning's training session, the Knights hit the track. A few had trouble staying on it, while others found going the wrong way also posed problems. The Warriors are sure to pose plenty on Friday night as well.
They're probably the most dangerous team of the football in the comp at the moment.
While there is always talk about how Newcastle play without Andrew Johns, Hagan believes the loss of Stacey Jones to the Warriors will hurt the visitors just as much.
I think they would almost cancel each other out, I guess.
In a new-look squad, halfback James Wynn gets a rare chance in the top grade while Justin Ryder returns to the wing. Jared O'Doherty is pushed into the starting side while Adam Woolner will make his first-grade debut. Knights everywhere man John Morris knows this is his best chance to show exactly what he's capable of. Spending time in several positions this season, he'll fill in for Denny Badiris during Origin.
I'm off contract this year and looking to negotiate another deal here to stay in Newcastle. So I've just got to get the form on the park, and now's the time to do it, I suppose, with Denny being out.
And the red and blue will be seen from here to Burke and back in the Variety Club Bash. After donating $34,000 to the charity last year, the Knights have a vehicle in their honour. The bash begins on Sunday.
They were there when buildings came tumbling down during the Newcastle earthquake, working side by side with ambulance and fire officers. But last year, the state's 8 police rescue squads appeared doomed. An internal review had recommended rescue duties be passed on to the fire brigade and ambulance service to free up 30 police. But Police Minister Michael Costa today rejected the plan, claiming in the wake of September 11 and the Christmas bushfires, specialised expertise is needed.
For Newcastle, it's a good thing. Newcastle Rescue Squad, Police Rescue Squad work very well with the ambulance rescue and the other service providers, all the volunteers that lend their time to rescue.
It's a very nice feeling to know that your career opportunities are concrete now.
Meantime, the Police Association is up in arms over the sentencing at Warramai Children's Court of a 15-year-old boy caught with a .44 Magnum handgun at Ferris Park at Charlestown. The juvenile, who's well known to police, was given 90 hours of community service for possession of an illegal firearm, along with 2 break-and-enter charges.
What needs to be done is a good review of what is taking place in the courts in relation to sentencing, and perhaps some, instead of maximum sentences, some minimum sentences.
Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
Well, the Dragons face their biggest challenge so far this season when they take on the Tigers at WIN Stadium this weekend. They've had a poor start to the season and really need to win this game. But they've lost their captain and playmaker Trent Barrett and Sean Timmins to State of Origin duty. Number one prop Jason Riles is suspended and hooker Mark Riddell is also out for this late tackle in last week's clash against the Raiders. Also last week, the Dragons fans booed them off to the half-time break. They returned in the second half to salvage a draw, but there's a lot of tradition in this club and they really need to get things rolling. Now, even though they got the youngest side in the competition this week, I still think they're capable of stepping up to the challenge. State of Origin players will break from camp tonight. It's an important part of their preparation where they get to go home and spend some time with their families, soak up the atmosphere and the importance of the game before returning on Sunday night for an intense preparation ahead of the big game. Don't forget the Newcastle Knights will be recognising their State of Origin players when they take on the Warriors tonight. They'll be forming a guard of honour before the team runs out. The try of the week goes to former Rothman medal winner Ewan McGrady, who's showing he's still got what it takes playing for Moree in the state's northwest. Now, he's seen here copying some rough stuff. He gets up and gives the Gunnedah winger a falcon for his troubles, and minutes later splits the defence for a 60-metre run and a great try. Well done. On to round 10, the State of Origin players out and 3 teams having the bye. It's a tough round to pick, but I still think the Newcastle Knights will get up tonight. My other tips are the Storm, Panthers, Raiders, Dragons and Bulldogs to win their matches. Good luck for your tips. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
On the surface, 49-year-old David Carr maintained a facade of respectability. He was active with Christchurch Cathedral and the State Labor Party, and at various times he was a lawyer for Prime Television, NBN Television and 2HD radio station. But his fall from grace was in 1998, while working as a consultant for the Strait Group, overseeing the sale of 30 Cooks Hill units. Carr pocketed a unit payment of $358,000 into his personal account. When confronted by Keith Stronach, he admitted the crime and later pleaded guilty. Carr also defrauded a South Australian television group of $320,000 in the mid-90s. And of the 2 companies, of which he embezzled a combined $680,000, he's since returned $120,000. Carr is thought to have spent the money on a lavish lifestyle. His New Lambton Heights home is in his wife's name.
I find it offensive when people are dishonest, and we employ a lot of professional people, as in engineers, architects, surveyors, etc., and you would expect the legal profession to have the same degree of accountability.
The Law Society paid out what was owing to Mr Stronach.
Community has the safety net of the Fidelity Fund, which pays back 100 cents in every dollar, and every solicitor, as part of their practising certificate renewal fees, money goes into the Fidelity Fund.
The disgraced solicitor sentenced to 4 years jail with a non-parole period of 2 years. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
The annual Memorial Day service at Federation House Cessnock saw families and friends joined by the Premier to remember miners who never returned home from work.
I just hope that through everything we're doing in cooperation with the union and the workforce, that there'll be no more names added to this wall.
Bob Carr's visit came less than 24 hours after the Manufacturing Workers Union intercepted the arrival of 24 imported rail wagons in Newcastle. Hardly what the jobs-focused Premier needs ahead of an election next March.
We believe that these wagons, which were originally going to be manufactured in Newcastle by Ganninans, that those jobs that are lost will never come back unless this government changes its attitude.
But the Premier says Bob's your uncle.
It's a very small sale. It's a couple of $1 million. The Hunter Valley is selling goods and services into the Chinese market. We're making literally billions from our trade with China. We can't turn around and say to the Chinese, no, you can't bid to sell us rolling stock. and they won a tender process.
The state government is also facing a backlash over reforms to the power industry. The Advanced Technology Centre provides technical support to power stations, but it's also on the Premier's privatisation list, along with its 85 workers. ATC industrial chemist Richard Brownette says the government has 85 million reasons why not to privatise the centre. That's how much it saved the state over the last year.
So Mr Carr has been informed wrongly, and he should take up the promise that he said he would, and that is to visit the Advanced Technology Centre and see what we actually do.
Stephen Mount, NBN News.
One in 3 Australians are now touched by cancer, which are pretty startling statistics. I lost my mum to cancer very suddenly, and I'm doing this in memory of her.
At the ocean bars, the sign said it all. It was literally warmer in than out. But still, swimmers were few and far between.
Freezing.
The cold snap giving lifeguards an easy day at the office.
We've had a few of our regulars. Our regulars are always here. They're here every day of the year, but we'll see the schools later on, but it's going to be a day where it's not going to be so many on the beach.
And plenty were caught unaware.
That's for sure. Nah, it's freezing.
Oh, it's shocking, mate, working up there in the wind.
And NBN's weatherman understands why some people may feel a little cheated.
Yeah, the cold snap certainly a little unexpected. You'd probably see this usually mid-winter, considering the first 10 days of May we had record temperatures. Our maximums were above 22 degrees. The wind chill this morning too down to around 0, so it certainly caught people by surprise.
If the sudden turn in weather is putting you on edge, there could be a good reason. Proving it's no old wives' tale, medical experts say strong winds affect human behaviour.
Most people find the wind and the grit and the blowing of things around the place irritating, and it also raises a lot of the sort of static electricity and sets everyone on edge. So there are very good reasons for it.
Stephen Mount, NBN News.
Like everywhere, it was pretty cool at Knights training today, but Craig Coleman's comments turned up the heat. The Bunnies believe the Knights are ripe for the picking this weekend.
Well, that's his opinion, and we're keen to get back out on the paddock and sort of make amends for last week, so it can't happen quick enough for us.
Peden, who is playing his final season with Newcastle, has heard all the calls before that Newcastle can't win without Andrew Johns. That's something he wants to change before he leaves the club.
And that's up to us to change. We got beat on the weekend, and that's probably going to give him a bit more ammunition. But at the end of the day, we know we can do it. It's just a matter of us getting out there and proving it.
A number of shadow players will remain in the top squad until the fitness of state players is known after the first Origin match on Wednesday. In Country Rugby League, Illawarra will be searching for its first country crown since Tommy Bishop's victorious team in 1978 when they play Newcastle this weekend. Brothers Craig and Mark Simon both shone for Illawarra in a side that will be hard to stop playing at home on Sunday. Newcastle is expected to name an unchanged lineup for Sunday's final.
Today's school excursion to Oakdale Farm and Fauna World proved to be a learning experience for both the children and their mums. The students all attend the Dale Young Mothers program. For 17-year-old Hayley, it provided a realistic means of completing her education while juggling the responsibilities of motherhood.
You need your year 10 or your year 12 to do nearly anything now, so I wanted to go back and finish it instead of later.
The school was the first in the state to have childcare on site. Its staff say they're only too aware of the stresses and strains faced daily by young mothers.
Many of them aren't living with their parents, and so they've got accommodation needs, and there's issues to do with the father of the baby. Some of them have got custody issues.
Mothers can even enrol in the program before they give birth. Jessica Waddington did, and says it will help her complete her studies and land her dream job as a childcare worker.
You've got support everywhere around you, and also save sending him off to a childcare centre where you don't know the people and you can't see him whenever you like.
Well, it'll be very different to what I've done before, obviously, because I've thrown myself around. I've been my own choreographer before, and now I'll be taking direction. So it'll be a good learning experience, I think.
Hunter Sports had Whitebridge 2-0 down and looking beaten by half-time. That is, until Rhys Johns found Scott Barwick perfectly placed to finish off a textbook cross. But Hunter's Igor Karafalowski obviously wasn't satisfied with only 2 goals to his name. His hat-trick and handy keeping from fellow Northern New South Wales rep Ben McNamara sealing the win. Meantime, it was a female-only affair at Blackall's Park, with 180 pupils from 7 local primary schools taking part in the Hunters' first footy festival. It was all about showing girls that soccer, Aussie rules, league and union aren't boys' games, with representatives from each code encouraging hands-on participation.
We want those girls out there having a go just as the boys, exactly.
It certainly looked like plenty were converted.
Alright, the league's top players go head-to-head in an intense battle that displays violence and legalised brutality. That's why I love State of Origin football.
Merriwa Shire Council was the victim of fraud and theft between 1999 and June last year. Tracy Jones pleaded guilty to fraud and stealing charges that alleged she transferred council cheques and electronic payments of council funds to herself, totalling $290,000. Money the 40-year-old from San Remo then used to play poker machines at licensed premises in Merriwa. Today in Muswellbrook Local Court, she was sentenced to 6 months home detention with a 9-month non-parole period. Magistrate McPherson sentenced Tracy Jones to home detention on the basis of an assessment that she has good prospects for rehabilitation. Jones will have her sentence supervised by the Probation and Parole Service. Magistrate McPherson told the court it was better for Tracy Jones to receive counselling for her gambling addiction and psychiatric care in the community. The Department of Gaming and Racing is conducting an investigation with cooperation from the Merriwa RSL Club as a result of the Jones case. An investigation the department would only say today has a high priority. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Five-year-old Jack Yates has just been told he has type 1 diabetes.
He's going to need to be given insulin every day for the rest of his life.
He was one of 6 new cases diagnosed at Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital in just 1 week.
He had a really bad night. He's going to the toilet and drinking, and then he started vomiting. And then Tuesday morning, he woke up and he just slept.
Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease and occurs when the body is unable to produce enough insulin.
The children aren't able to miss an injection or else they will get sick.
Once they're diagnosed, major changes must be made to a child's life. This includes carefully monitoring what they eat, how often they exercise, and adopting a strict routine of ensuring they receive enough insulin. George Farrell was diagnosed with diabetes 10 years ago.
We were all devastated because George was only 2 and he had been sick for a while, but we didn't know what was wrong with him.
It's hard the first couple of years, but then you get used to it.
In the last 10 years, there's been an international increase in the incidence of diabetes. It's particularly alarming in the Hunter, which now has one of the highest rates in the world.
And in that time we've had no real staffing increases, and as a result we're having difficulty at the moment providing the services that we provided 10 years ago.
There's no explanation for the increase of cases in the Hunter. So for now, diabetics like Jack must stick to their rigid routine of medication to ensure they maintain a healthy life.
Well, it's the worst thing I suppose. You've got it for the rest of his life, haven't you? Like the insulin all the time now.
I think it's good for every person that has diabetes, if they can find a cure, because then they can live a normal life.
Tomorrow we take a look at the heartbreaking condition known as cystic fibrosis. We meet some inspiring young people who are forced to come to grips with the harsh reality of their disease.
The cause of schizophrenia is still largely a mystery, but now researchers from Newcastle are trying to shed some light on the debilitating mental illness. They're using neuroimaging equipment to measure the brain's electrical activity.
We also will be looking at those areas of the brain that are particularly important for processing sounds, but also other areas of the brain such as the frontal lobes, which have been implicated in schizophrenia as well. And we suspect, again from some preliminary data, that what we're actually seeing in patients and in family members might actually be largely resulting from impairments in frontal lobe.
But not only sufferers will be tested. Researchers are also trying to find out if healthy family members exhibit similar brain functions.
Well, we're interested in whether there are markers, biological markers of the disorder. We have some preliminary data from a study that was run in Perth before I moved to Newcastle, demonstrating that family members have a similar sort of response.
If the theory proves correct, researchers may be able to find factors that protect people from getting the disease, explaining why some members of the same family don't develop schizophrenia. 1 in 100 people in Australia suffer from schizophrenia. Up to half of those sufferers attempt suicide. 10% of those are successful. Working under the umbrella of the Hunter Medical Research Institute, the study is an international collaboration.
In the third year, we're actually moving the project to Finland to use some equipment that's not available here in Australia to try and determine more precisely where in the brain these signals are coming from.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Brett Taylor was arrested earlier in the month for his alleged involvement in supplying a commercial quantity of the drug at Ellamore Vale and Maryland. The charge relates to a period between 1996 and last year when Taylor was a member of the Nomads motorcycle gang. The court today continued the 39-year-old's bail so he can prepare his defence of the charges. Taylor will reappear late next month. Approval of a new neighbour for Scott Street landmark, the Longworth Institute, sparked the home unit development debate. The Harbour View apartments add 11 three-bedroom units to a growing property stock. Councillors are concerned Inner Newcastle is fast becoming a haven for empty nesters who sell up the suburban family home for a city lifestyle. While Councillor Barry Scully thinks market forces will determine the new face of the city, he says families are pivotal to Newcastle's future.
Because I think that's when the revitalisation of the inner city will begin, when we see families coming back to live in the city area.
Inner City Councillor Marilyn Eade wants an investigation into how a greater variety of people could be attracted to live in the city. Councillor Eade believes there needs to be more affordable housing options for people like first home buyers, and a review of the shop top housing policy could provide some answers. Across town, councillors cleared the Newcastle Regional Heliport at Steel River for takeoff. The purpose-built facility to be constructed later this year will have a variety of benefits.
In particular promoting tourism of Newcastle, the Hunter Valley and Port Stephens areas.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
From swags to hot showers, or caravans to campers and every other imaginable aid to tackling the great outdoors, they're all crammed into the Maitland Showground this weekend. Some of the more cocky exhibitors actually praying for rain.
Well, it's a good time to see all the quality campers because we're happy if it rains because we've got waterproof canvas. And so if you can have a good day like this, people can see the real product under test conditions.
Caravans might be regarded as less adventurous, but clever off-road suspension systems now see some homes away from home, following four-wheel drives down rough bush tracks. The four-wheel drive test area is proving popular, with vehicles available for the cost of a donation to the region's rescue helicopter. And off-road adventurers can even learn how to get stuck and unstuck. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
If you needed any confirmation as to how highly regarded this carnival is, you needed only to look in the grandstand. Australian great Arthur Beetson perched behind fellow kangaroo Noel Cleal among the rows of other talent scouts. The action in the middle was worth the look, Northern racing to an early lead against Western in the first Open Division match. But Western quickly regained control and powerful forward Tom Leroyd setting up Michael Walton. Fullback Blake Tremaine Cannon was also heavily involved. His first try took the lead, while a second, not long after, extended it for Western. Down 24-6 after the break, Northern looked headed for a shock first round defeat, but then began an amazing turnaround. Luke Mercer going solo as Northern clicked into gear. A simple set play had the home side on level terms as Dane Tilse found Dean Cook for his second and a 24-all scoreline. Jermaine Ale certainly didn't do his claims for a state jumper any harm, with busting runs that soon set Northern up again. Mercer grabbing a double as his side took back the lead. Northern scoring 28 unanswered points to take the match by 8. They play the imposing Sydney side tomorrow. "23 years without a title had Illawarra all fired up on home turf to make sure they didn't go without for another year. After some missed chances, Newcastle's frustrations were only compounded with Scott Coxon ending the first half in the bin. Skipping away to a healthy lead, the home side was never going to get caught after the break. Illawarra lifting the trophy for the first time since 1978.
But at the end of the day, I could see the hunger with the Illawarra boys, and certainly we didn't match that, unfortunately, and we've paid the ultimate price.
Meanwhile, all Newcastle club games washed out from the weekend are to be played tomorrow night. In round 6 in Group 21, just one game with Scone too good for Aberdeen, winning 28-8. The tension was obvious between Maitland and Phoenix North in their Premier League hockey match at the weekend. And why not? North came from 3-0 down to storm home in the second half. That was to draw level at 4-4, while this by Greg Charlton sealed an amazing come-from-behind win. In other games, the Entrants by 1, South beat the Tigers by 2, while West and Uni shared the points. In Black Diamond AFL, just 2 games played and they were low-scoring affairs. Gosford snuck home while the Bombers outscored the Bulldogs.
They're modified kids' toys programmed via computer chips, enabling the robo-dogs to find the ball, chase it and even kick it.
Well, they actually communicate using a wireless network, so they can communicate, and that allows them to develop strategies to play soccer in the way that humans do.
Today, Newcastle University hosted the country's first Robo-Cup League-to-League Open. Sci-fi poochers programmed by students from Newcastle Uni, going paw to paw with Melbourne University and reigning world champions, the University of New South Wales, which won today. All 3 teams will fly to Fukuoka in Japan in 3 weeks for the World Robo Cup, staged simultaneously with the human version. According to the RoboCup website, the dream is to develop a team of human-sized humanoid robots by the year 2050 and see them play the world's greatest soccer players and win. It's all part of the exploration of artificial intelligence.
It's the Japanese that are fueling a lot of interest in robotics right now because they have an ageing population. So they want to develop humanoid robots to take care of their aged people.
But in soccer, a game of high emotions, there are some things that remain uniquely human.
We're trying to get the victory dance working when they score a goal, but we're still getting there.
I think Council's got to come to terms with the future of Surf House, and really if there's no successful tender, is the only real option is to see it demolished.
In only 2 professional bouts, Newcastle's Ben Steele has no doubt made quite an impression on the kickboxing world and his opponents. But after stopping Sydney's Michael Nyland in a matter of minutes last time around, he doubts history will repeat itself tomorrow night.
The last fight, it was a tough opponent. It was a lucky fight. It was a good one, but it was very lucky. But this one I know is going to be very tough, and it'll be fought right to the end.
That's because he's facing Melbourne's Barish Nezef. Already a 3-time world champion, he's got form on the board and a new light middleweight crown in his sights.
I've fought the best, so it's going to be a good challenge for Ben, I think.
The first challenge for Steele was met by making today's weight heavier than his usual super welterweight mark, and he says he's feeling strong. The fact that he's fighting in Newcastle also adds fuel to the fire.
The home crowd means a great deal to me. It's a big inspiration to get the support and the cheering. It's definitely a big support.
Essential to Steele's hopes of moving up the world rankings, the fight is the feature on a packed card at Club Nova, which kicks off at 8 tomorrow night. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
Long-awaited improvements for the Mile Lakes National Park have been announced. The popular holiday spot has been at the centre of a dispute between campers and the National Parks and Wildlife Service, since Rodney Gann died after being struck by a falling tree branch at Mungo Brush on Boxing Day 2000. The circumstances surrounding his death will be heard before a jury at a coronial inquest starting in June. For nearly 2 years, the park has been out of bounds to campers, while a risk assessment was carried out.
These forests are all one age class, so we have these large areas of trees all the same age, all dying basically at the same time.
Today, National Parks announced it will reopen 450 campsites stretching from Mungo Brush to Bungwall. That's less than half the original number and excludes Tate's, One Horse Sands, Paperbark Flat and Tickrabit. Also on the drawing board are new amenities, but they're a long way off.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to do. It'll basically mean the redesign and refitting of every camping area in the park. It's a big project for us and it'll take some time to implement.
The state government is expected to spend around $1.5 million on the park by the Christmas school holidays, but local business people say it's too little too late. They claim the damage to the area's tourism industry has already been done. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
Five-month-old Chantel Gamble has now recovered from meningococcal disease, which plagued her tiny body 12 days ago. The bacteria can cause the loss of limbs or even kill a child within a day. But her mum's observation saved her life.
Yeah, she wasn't herself, so when I noticed the rash and spotties on her leg, and my mother-in-law said, look, I think she's either got chickenpox and measles, so we went up to the hospital.
Chantel is one of 5 cases in the Hunter last month, and a regular increase not seen elsewhere in the state.
I don't think there's anything particular to the Hunter. Meningococcal infection has a way of coming and going, and it may just be random variation in baseline disease, and it may just disappear now and go down to very low levels. We may not see a peak in the usual late winter spring period.
Those most at risk are children aged under 5 or those in an older age group between 15 and 25. The disease is spread through the transfer of saliva or coughing. Symptoms include high temperature, headache, nausea, irritability, weakness, stiff neck or a pinpoint or purple blotchy rash.
He's Shakespeare's biggest villain, and he's sure to delight Newcastle audiences with his evil antics and caustic wit.
Well, the plot's quite simple. It's Richard, Duke of Gloucester, the character I play, is determined to become king, and he'll wipe out anybody who gets in the way.
Richard III is not only for theatre lovers. School children are also being catered for with a matinee performance. It's all part of a policy by the Bell Shakespeare Company to attract younger audiences to the works of the bard.
While we're here in Newcastle, the actors are going out into the schools before the play to tell the kids what it's about and, increase their enjoyment of it.
The performance is a homecoming of sorts for company founder John Bell.
I was born in Newcastle, and I like coming back to the Civic Theatre particularly. It's a great theatre, and it's good to see it being used for live theatre. In those days, when I was a kid, it was purely a cinema.
Richard III opens at the Civic Theatre tomorrow.
Ratepayers across Australia already pay $100 million each year to subsidise recycling programs, and the Mayor of Port Stephens says changes need to be made to offset rising collection costs. Steve Bustede is calling on the state government to introduce a container refund program, similar to that in South Australia, to give consumers some incentive to recycle. He claims a refundable levy on containers would save money, double recovery rates, and reduce beverage litter by up to 90%. Meantime, the Hunter celebrated World Environment Day. In Newcastle, 6,000 trees were planted for the Council's Greenfleet Tree Project. The Shortland Wetlands Centre held an awareness day for school children, highlighting a range of issues from recycling to preserving the marine environment, even the latest in fertilisers. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
With two Blues already watching from the stand, the day quickly got worse. Mark Hughes lasted just a few minutes before seeking help. The centre's discomfort later diagnosed as inflammation to the lining of the heart, a condition brought on by a viral infection and serious enough to rule the centre out, with more tests pending.
A couple of options there, probably Kurt Gidley as a centre or Julian Bailey.
Late today, Gidley was the confirmed starter, one of three replacements for the side. John Morris steps in for hooker Danny Badeiras, while Clint Newton will start for Steve Simpson, whose run of 83 consecutive games for the Knights will be ended by a knee injury.
It would have been nice to get to that 100, but never mind. I think I'd be more nervous than what I am when I play, so...
The night's disruption, music to Melbourne's ears, who had their share of off-field dramas of late. Former Newcastle boy Rodney Howe handed the captaincy for good as the team attempts to turn around a run of 5 losses.
It's not a desperate situation, but look, it's just a point of the year where we've got to stand up and be counted.
The Storm still boasts several former Newcastle-based players, with Richard Swain and Robbie Ross among them, but State Rep Scott Hill will be the one to stop. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Raymond Colin Smith today paid the price for the crimes he committed against children during a visit to the Philippines 3 years ago. He was an engineer on board the Christian aid ship the MV Island Mercy when it visited a mission at Olongapo City. There he befriended 2 6-year-old girls. The court heard he took them to his room, gave them toys, then molested and photographed them. One of the young victims reported the assault, which led to a federal police investigation. When they raided Smith's Shortland home last year, he made a full confession. Police then found computer discs containing close to 3,000 images of child pornography and an apology letter. Sent to the co-director of the aid ship, it read, "My weakness was my deep loneliness for a wife and my curiosity about females." Smith had been on probation for 24 other child sex offences in Queensland when the assaults happened. Judge Ralph Coulahan contended that the offender is still unwilling to accept responsibility for his actions, instead seeking to blame circumstance or others. The paedophile was sentenced to 3 years jail with a non-parole period of 21 months. For the 3 other charges, each received a sentence of 18 months to be served concurrently in protective custody. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.